There are exactly 40 seconds between the moment a Marchigiana bull weighing 900 kilograms steps off the transport ramp and the moment its entire physical profile exists as a digital record inside a processing server, and in that window, almost nothing is left to chance. The animal moves first, hooves striking galvanized steel, and a low rumble rolls through the holding yard as the herd shifts as one mass. A handler at the gate speaks quietly, almost flatly, instructing the line to keep them moving slowly and to watch the gates on the left, and the words carry no urgency, because urgency is the enemy here. Stress raises cortisol. Cortisol degrades both temperament and hide quality, and a panicked 900-kilogram animal pressing against a chute rated for 2 tons of lateral load is a safety event nobody wants. So the system is built for calm. The chutes curve deliberately because cattle move more willingly along a bend than a straight line, and the floor is grooved at precise intervals to give traction without injuring the hoof. Every gate, every ramp angle, every holding bay has been engineered around a single principle, which is that a relaxed animal is a higher value animal, and value here begins long before any tool ever touches anything. What most people never realize is that a single bull is not one product. It is several, separated and routed the instant it enters the building. The horns are one stream, the hide is another, and each follows a completely different industrial path with its own tolerances, its own machinery, and its own definition of perfection. This is why the first real station is not a cutting floor, but an assessment bay, a clean, bright room where the raw animal is read like a set of measurements. A technician runs a gloved hand along the flank, confirming minimal scarring, because every scar is a defect that will later force a hide to be downgraded or trimmed. And trimming means lost square meters, and lost square meters mean lost money. In a market where premium full-grain leather can move at well over $100 per square meter, the horns are measured next, and the figure spoken aloud, 22 centimeters, is not trivia. Horn length, base diameter, and internal density determine exactly what that horn can become, because a horn destined for a luxury object must have enough solid keratin mass to survive grinding down to a finished core without cracking. Hide quality is confirmed excellent, the data is uploaded, and only now is the animal sorted. Group A routed toward horn processing, Group B toward the leather line. The horn itself is a remarkable material, and understanding it is the key to understanding the entire process. Horn is keratin, the same structural protein as hair and hooves, but compacted into a dense, layered composite that behaves under tooling far more like a soft mineral than like bone. It has no internal blood supply once removed and processed, no nerves, and a density that allows it to be ground, heated, and polished into surfaces that gleam like polished stone. But it is also temperamental. Keratin is hygroscopic, meaning it absorbs and releases moisture, and a horn that dries too fast or heats too aggressively will check and crack along its growth lines, destroying a piece that may represent several years of an animal's growth. This is why the processing room is climate-controlled to a stable humidity, and why the first machines the horn meets are not aggressive cutters, but precision scanners. A laser scanning head sweeps the horn surface, building a three-dimensional map accurate to within fractions of a millimeter, identifying the dense outer wall and the softer inner channel, so the robotic tooling knows exactly where solid material ends and hollow begins. Then the multi-axis arms take over, and this is where the transformation becomes genuinely mechanical. A 6-axis robotic polishing arm moves with a repeatability of around 0.02 of a millimeter, contouring the horn against grinding and buffing wheels that spin at carefully governed speeds. The speed matters enormously, because friction generates heat, and keratin begins to soften and scorch at temperatures it would never tolerate. Somewhere above roughly 200 degrees Celsius, the protein structure breaks down, and the surface yellows and burns. So the wheels are kept cool, the contact pressure is monitored continuously, and fine white horn dust drifts off the piece in a steady stream, pulled away by extraction systems that recover it rather than letting it escape, because even that dust has value as a raw material. Layer by layer, the rough, dark, ridged exterior is removed, and beneath it emerges a smooth, dense, luminous white surface that the original animal never showed to the world. That white is the prize. It is what allows a strip of horn to read, to a luxury buyer, as something closer to ivory or polished bone, an object of weight and permanence. While the horns are being shaped, the heavier engineering happens elsewhere, in the thermoforming and structural preparation stage. Some components require heat to take their final form, and here the process draws directly from materials engineering. Controlled thermal application softens specific elements just enough to be shaped against forming dies, then cooled to lock the new geometry in place, a principle no different from how a blacksmith works steel or how a manufacturer molds thermoplastics, except that the temperatures and pressures here are tuned to organic material that punishes mistakes. Hydraulic presses apply force measured in tons across a controlled surface area, and the engineering challenge is uniformity, because if pressure concentrates unevenly, the material deforms inconsistently and the part is scrapped. Every press cycle is timed, every temperature logged, and the rhythm of the floor settles into the steady hiss of heat and the deep mechanical thud of presses closing and opening, a cadence that never quite stops. The leather line, meanwhile, is its own world, and it is arguably the more demanding of the two. A raw hide is enormous, often 4 square meters or more from a mature Marchigiana, and it is wildly inconsistent across its own surface. The leather running along the back, the area called the bend, is the densest and most valuable, with tight fiber structure and minimal stretch, while the belly and flanks are looser, thinner, and far more prone to stretching out of shape. So before anything is built, the hide must be read like a map. Line specialists run their hands and eyes across the grain sheets, analyzing surface finish consistency, identifying the variation between zones, flagging insect bite scars, healed scratches, and grain irregularities that the untrained eye would never notice. This is the grain configuration screening, and it is where the real quality decisions happen, because a single hide will be cut into dozens of components, and each component must come from the zone that matches its purpose. Structural panels come from the bend, flexible linings from the softer areas, and nothing is placed by guesswork. Before that cutting can happen, the hide passes through a critical and almost invisible stage, which is moisture control. Finished leather lives or dies by its water content. Too wet, and it will stretch, warp, and grow weak as it dries unpredictably later. Too dry, and it becomes brittle, cracking at the fold. So the hides are hung and brought to a precise equilibrium moisture content, often somewhere in the range of 14 to 18%, depending on the final application. And a team tracks this consistency across entire lots before authorizing any transition into assembly. A hide that drifts outside tolerance is held back, because allowing one inconsistent piece into the assembly line contaminates the uniformity of an entire production batch, and uniformity is the whole promise of a premium product. The discipline here is relentless and quiet, hides hanging in long rows under even light, slowly equalizing, monitored not by feel alone, but by instruments that read the numbers the human hand can only approximate. When the materials finally meet the assembly line, the tolerances tighten again, this time down to the scale of individual stitches. A luxury object is judged at the seam, and the seam is pure engineering. Stitch density, measured in stitches per inch, has to remain perfectly consistent, because variation in stitch spacing is the single most visible sign of low-quality manufacturing. The thing a discerning eye catches instantly, even without knowing why. Panel thickness must be uniform within fractions of a millimeter, because where two panels of unequal thickness meet, the surface telegraphs a ridge, and a ridge on a finished luxury piece is a fatal flaw. So the final inspection is microscopic in its attention. Technicians examine seam microstitching under bright, even light, checking that every line of thread sits at uniform tension, that no stitch is loose, no thread frayed, no panel misaligned. Only when a piece passes this scrutiny does it receive its quality approval, the final seal that converts it from a manufactured object into a certified luxury good. And this is the part worth sitting with, because the contrast is almost difficult to believe. What began as a 900-kilogram animal walking through a dusty yard, all rough hide and dark-ridged horn, ends as a small collection of flawless objects resting under soft light in a pristine room, each one smooth, weighted, and quietly expensive. A single set of finished pieces from one animal can represent a value many times greater than the live animal itself, because the transformation has not merely processed a material, it has multiplied its worth at every stage through precision, through control, and through an obsessive refusal to accept variation. Nothing in the room hints at where it came from. The white horn reads as polished stone. The gray leather reads as deliberate, luxurious design. And the buyer who eventually holds one of these objects will feel weight and finish and craftsmanship, and will understand none of the tons of pressure, none of the degrees of controlled heat, none of the fractions of a millimeter that stand between raw biology and finished luxury. That is the real story of a place like this. It is not a factory that destroys something rough to make something refined. It is a system engineered to recognize that the rough material was never waste at all, that inside the hide and the horn of a single bull there was always a flawless object waiting to be revealed, and that the only thing standing between the animal in the yard and the object on the display was knowledge, patience, and the willingness to measure everything, twice, before allowing it to become what it was always capable of being.